acquiring Bitcoin. And I'm not talking about purchasing a Bitcoin network. I'm talking about actually getting Bitcoin that you can start using in a practical, meaningful way. Let's begin. Our objective for you and I in this nugget is simple. How do we get Bitcoin, significant Bitcoin, inside of our account? Now, I'm talking about more above and beyond just doing a Twitter message on blockchain.info and getting a small fraction of a Bitcoin. How do we get some real Bitcoin, some significant volume of it inside of our account? That's what our focus is in this nugget. And here's the options we're going to take a look at together step by step. We can buy it using an exchange where we take our fiat currency, whatever it is, and we say what's the going rate, and we simply buy it. That's one option. We can sell stuff. For example, if you have some product or something that you want to sell, we can find a buyer. If that buyer is willing to pay in Bitcoin, that's another way to get Bitcoin associated with our wallets, which really is being associated with our private keys, which are kept in our wallets. We could provide a good or service. You could be a tutor or a programmer or a consultant or something else that's being willing to be paid in Bitcoin for your services. You could also do mining. We have a whole separate nugget on mining, but I want to introduce the idea that if you want to become part of a pool of miners looking to validate the blockchain, you can also get paid for that. Even if you never are successful in finding the actual perfect hash for the blockchain, for your effort as part of a pool of devices in a mining pool, you can still be compensated a very, 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 very small amount for your work as one little teeny piece in a large pool of devices all working on maintaining the blockchain. And then I have this catch-all called Other. And we'll take a look at some other methods that we could use to have Bitcoin coming the right direction. Now, what exactly is the right direction? That is towards you. It's always better to be earning more Bitcoin than spending. And that goes for any currency you're using. It's always better to have more coming in than you have going out when it comes to currency. So let's tackle our first bullet point together, and that is buying Bitcoin. In order to buy something, we need a couple of things. Well, actually, three things. You need a buyer, you need money, and you need a seller. And a great way to put all those together is on something called an exchange. In this case, Mt. Gox is an example of a Bitcoin exchange. So you can create an account at Mt. Gox. You can fund it, meaning send them local currency, whatever your currency is. And based on the current exchange rate, they will grant you a certain quantity of Bitcoin based on how much currency you gave them and what the exchange rate currently is. So that's the idea of how you could actually purchase Bitcoin by using a Bitcoin exchange. Now, there's a big difference coming up when we are going to log into an exchange. We have to create an account, and it's not anonymous. They absolutely want to know who they're dealing with for these exchanges. See, previously, when we dealt with our wallet at blockchain.info and the legacy client on our PC, we didn't have to supply a whole bunch of details about our information. No social security numbers, no addresses. I mean, it was true that we supplied a phone number perhaps if we wanted SMS text messages for alerts, or we supplied an email address if we wanted to back up our wallets via email. But they didn't care about us as an individual as far as the details. This is way, way different at Mt. Gox. They want to know who you are, and you're going to have to verify it with some documentation. Now, my experience was this. When I first signed up, it took like a week for them to look at all the documents and the information I submitted to them before they said, okay, we verified this account, you are good to go. So if you're in a hurry with Mt. Gox, don't be in a big hurry. It's going to take a little while for them to verify all the details because they really want to prove to themselves, for safety purposes, for their own security, exactly who they're dealing with. Once we've logged into Mt. Gox, we can then buy and trade Bitcoin. Now, of course, it's going to take some currency. Let's talk about getting money in first. You need some local currency at Mt. Gox so you can do trades. It's like having a brokerage at a stock exchange. They're not going to let you buy stocks unless you funded that somehow. So we look at our funding options. I'm going to click on that link there. Here's our options for funding to get cash in our local currency. I have used BitInstant, and I've also used Dwolla. In the United States, Dwolla, it's a website. It's like an online bank kind of a situation. And Dwolla comes from the name of dollar and web, and they kind of merged them together for Dwolla. So I actually linked my Dwolla account, and I put some money in there, and then I can actually move my money from Dwolla electronically over to Mt. Gox as I need to, because that's one of their accepted pay methods. I've also used BitInstant. I didn't use it to fund Mt. Gox specifically, but I did it to put more Bitcoin inside of one of my accounts. And the way it worked was I clicked on the link for BitInstant, and they had me go down to a store, get a money order for a certain quantity of money, have it be sent, and 30 minutes later after it was sent and verified, the appropriate number of Bitcoin showed up in my wallet. It was fantastic. So those are two that I've used personally, and I'm sure that other options are fine too. I would definitely recommend doing due diligence and have a comfort level with whatever way you're going to fund or get money into the exchange. So for example, let me show you what Dwolla looks like. So with Dwolla, it's saying, okay, you want to fund it via Dwolla. You can go ahead and click right here. It's going to open up a new window. I can put the amount. Let's say I want to send $25 over. As a single payment, there's the details. It was pre-filled for me. I'll click on next. It wants a PIN number just to verify who I am. I'm going to click on next. And it says, okay, you've got $50 available in Dwolla. Do you want to go ahead and do this? I'm going to say yes. And it's asking me, this is from my actual Dwolla account. Are you sure you want to send this $25 to this account? MUTUM SIGILLUM LLC, which is going to be the holding take, if you will, as it goes over to the exchange. I'm going to say, sure, go ahead and take it. And it's done. Now, because in the background, all of this has to be verified, it's not instantaneous. That money is not, if I go back to my Mt. Gox account, that funding, that amount of money is not going to be sitting there immediately. It's going to take a period of time. You'll notice I don't have any money that's shown up yet, but it'll get there shortly. I actually did two transactions. I did one about 15 minutes ago just to make sure it would work, and then I did the one just now for the $25. They should both show up in some period of time, and it isn't instantaneous again because they have to go ahead and verify it. So in short, to fund it, we go to this option right here, and we select a funding option, and that way you can move money into your account. Once you have that money in your account, you can then go ahead and use it to purchase Bitcoin at the exchange. You know, since I don't have any cash that showed up yet, it's on the way. Let's go ahead and sell a couple Bitcoin, because I do. I have 2 Bitcoin there, and let's sell one of them. Let's do a market order. We'll go to sell. I'll say I want to sell 1 Bitcoin. That could be worth a whopping $20 US at the moment, and I'm going to go ahead and click on sell. And so it simply put in whatever the current price was, which is $21.06, which is fantastic. It matches the last price, and it has been queued for execution. So here in a short period of time, I should have 1 Bitcoin showing up here in my wallet, and I should have approximately $21 US over here. Plus the other money that's on its way in transit from Dwolla, which will also show up as well. Another option, which is a lot more fun, by the way, than using a Bitcoin exchange, would be to sell something and get paid in Bitcoin. Let's take a look at a couple places that we could go on the web where people are willing to receive Bitcoin. Now, if you have a good or a service that you want to sell, it's also a great place to advertise. Here we have the Bitcoin Classifieds. This is bitcoinclassifieds.net. Another example of another site that uses Bitcoin and accepts Bitcoin is bitmit.net right here. Those are 2 that I'd strongly encourage you to check out and advertise on. If you've got a product or a service and you're willing to receive Bitcoin, let people know about it by participating on these sites. Another really fun website is mokimarket.com, who is very much into Bitcoin. So there's a logo at the very bottom indicating that Bitcoin is proudly accepted here. Maybe it doesn't say proudly, but again, selling a good or a service or having an online presence that accepts Bitcoin is a fantastic way to acquire Bitcoin if that's what you're interested in doing. Another website that caught my eye was a job board called bitgigs.com. And here we have all kinds of various services. For example, we have tutors. There's a section over here for programming, writing, technology, advertising, graphics, etc. And here, if somebody's willing to receive Bitcoin, if you have a service that you provide, and especially if it can be done electronically where you don't have to travel, you can pretty much service anyone anywhere in the world digitally. They could pay you in Bitcoin, and there's no middleman. Another website I think you should check out is workforbitcoin.com. This is a collection place for people who are looking for services or have services where they can meet and find each other, and they're all willing to use Bitcoin as the language of love for payment for those services. So if we scroll down the list, let's see if there's anything interesting here. So here's someone who needs a JavaScript coder. That's interesting. Here's somebody who will make a website for you, and here's somebody who draw a painting for you. Cheap offer. Oh, look at that. 0.1 Bitcoin. That is pretty cheap. I wonder how good it would be. If we scroll back up to the top, if you want to focus on a certain area, for example, tutoring. I like tutoring. I like people helping other people out. So here's a person, I will tutor your kids online for BTC, and the cost is 1 BTC. Fantastic. So we click on that, and it has additional details. So I'm currently offering tutoring by the hour online. I'm a sophomore in college from Austin, Texas. I've got a 3.93 GPA. Not bad. Interesting. With online tools like Skype and remote desktop and VNC and so forth, I could see that person very easily being successful in tutoring somebody on a topic that he has skills in. Fantastic. And it's all being done without a middleman. So this is yet another great way to put somebody who has a need in touch with somebody who can service that need, and the way they can pay for it is Bitcoin. Another way that an individual can get some Bitcoin is to participate and have their computer or computers participate in Bitcoin mining. See, here's how it breaks down. Let's say you and I are going to have a transaction, and I'm going to send you some Bitcoin. So you send me your address, and then I use my Bitcoin client, and I say, I'm going to send you 1.0 Bitcoin. So I send it. In the background, my client is using my private keys to digitally sign the transaction, so it's authorized and it's on its way. That transaction gets sent out into the Bitcoin network, along with everybody else's. So about every 10 minutes, all the transactions for those 10 minutes get put into what is called a block. And that block is mathematically linked to the previous 10 minutes or the previous block. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of Bitcoin. So every single transaction is going to be verified collectively by the Bitcoin network. So what we can do, is we can participate in mining. We can use custom computers, we can use custom apps, we can use a web browser to participate as a group of individuals, hoping that we can be the group that solves the next block in the blockchain. So the reality is, every 10 minutes there's a new block, approximately every 10 minutes, there's a new block of transactions. Bitcoin, the network, automatically awards 25 Bitcoin for the computer that solves that next block in the blockchain. So by participating with a group, if that group wins, then the group can share the winnings. And I've got a completely separate nugget on the mining process. So I wanted to point out for now that by doing Bitcoin mining, there's the possibility of small returns that could come to you if you're participating in a large pool of computers and that pool of computers happens to solve the next block in the blockchain. Let's take a look at our methods we've covered so far. The first was to simply go out and buy Bitcoin. And where would we do that? And the answer is we should do that at a reputable exchange, a Bitcoin exchange. And that beats doing it personally. And let me tell you why. This is pretty serious. Let's say that you and I have 1,000 Bitcoin and we want to sell it. So we go on eBay and we say we've got 1,000 Bitcoin for sale and we want to sell it for $100,000, whatever the current exchange rate is. So we say we want to sell for $100,000, and somebody says, yeah, I'd like to buy that. So what they do is they pay us via PayPal or some other method, and they pay us, and then we transfer the Bitcoin to them through our client. Now, once that transfer is settled and the Bitcoin network has verified that transaction, what would prevent that customer from going back to the PayPal and saying, hey, you know what? I bought all this Bitcoin. He never sent it. That would be very, very tough to go to court with. And because of all the money, we would probably have to go to court. So to avoid any of that nastiness, I would strongly recommend using a well-respected, established Bitcoin exchange for any time you want to buy or sell Bitcoin. When you're dealing with another individual party, there's just too much risk, in my opinion. Other ways of getting Bitcoin is we could sell things, tangible items, we could sell services and get paid in Bitcoin, or become part of the Bitcoin mining and receive very, very little Bitcoin. There's not a whole bunch of gold in them there hills for Bitcoin mining. We'll talk more about that in that nugget. Now, I want to focus on this guy just for a moment. Other methods of getting Bitcoin. In the other category, there's an entire world of online wagering and online gaming that is more and more using Bitcoin as their currency. Now, CBT Nuggets and myself, we are not here to offer legal advice regarding online gaming. My goal here is simply to talk about the fact that it exists. Now, one example that's very, very popular is called Satoshi Dice. And here's how it operates. With Satoshi Dice, you simply say, I want to bet. I want to bet 1 Bitcoin or 5 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin or some quantity of Bitcoin, and I want to bet on a number. And here's how it works. The Satoshi Dice system is going to electronically create a number, and that's going to be between 0 and 65,000. I think it's 535. So 0 and 65,000-ish. And based on that number, whatever your bet was, you can get a return or lose your bet. So if you wanted to bet, for example, that it would be lower than 64,000, which is very probable, it's 97.6% chance that you're right, you would receive a 1.004 multiplier. So if you bet 1 Bitcoin, you get 1 Bitcoin and some change back. And you'd be right 97.65% of the time. The house takes their percent, so they don't care. They don't care. They're going to make 1.9% every time somebody bets. So if you're a winner, it's great. If you're not a winner, you're going to lose your bet. And that's how it works. So if you go down to the middle part here, here's the 32,000 range. So here's 32,768 right in the middle. You got a 50% chance, and if you win, it's a 1.957 multiplier. It's almost twice your money if you win. And if you lose, of course, you lose. So this is a very quick, and you don't have to wait very long either. You click on your bet, you specify what you want to bet, it goes. So there's one example of how Bitcoin are being used in a wagering environment with Satoshi Dice. As another example of an entity that uses Bitcoin as their currency is Seals with Clubs, sealswithclubs.eu. And they have no cash outside of the Bitcoin currency. So people, when they play, they use Bitcoin to play, and they get rewarded with Bitcoin based on their wins or losses. And it's a complete 100%, as far as I've seen, it's a complete Bitcoin play. So I mentioned these as two examples of methods in the other category that we could acquire Bitcoin. And I also want to point out that based on statistics and odds, these are also a couple of ways of losing Bitcoin based on how good you are or how lucky you are at each of these sites. In this nugget, we've taken a look at several methods to acquire and have Bitcoin coming into us. Here's your homework assignment. If you have a good or a service and you're doing it online, I would strongly recommend to consider the option of creating a free e-wallet and then consider accepting Bitcoin for some of your products or services that you offer. I have had a blast spending this time with you. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.